Hello and welcome to Masters Bike Mods. This is part 6 of the lockdown project. This is actually going to be a tale of woe. Now if you're kind of a bit emotionally sensitive, you may want to tune in another time because there is a lot of emotional roller coaster in this episode, but I can assure you there's light at the end of the tunnel. So there's always light at the end of the tunnel in Masters Bike Mods. But anyway, let me talk you through where I've got to. So quite often when you're working on projects, you have to go backwards to go forwards. I've had to seriously go backwards following some events last Sunday. So it's Saturday today. I was really excited last Sunday, thought I was going to finally get the bike up and running. I've got my parts, it was all looking like it was going to go well, and then unfortunately it all kind of went wrong. So let me talk about the first problem. So this is a part I've been waiting for ages. It's the cable stop clamp for the outer gear cable. So my idea was, so the reason I need one of these is because I don't have these features on my frame. So ordinarily on my older gear levers, they were kind of, these parts were inbuilt into the levers. But yeah, so I basically need to add these on. So what I thought would be a neat solution is I would get one of these clamps. It would go onto the steerer tube beneath the stem, and it would sit like that. And basically the part of the cable, outer cable, would sit in there. This part sits in the frame cable stop, which does exist. That would go on the steerer tube like that. It also acts as a spacer to give a bit more height. So I thought that would be quite neat. But the snag was, and some of you who are ahead of the game already might have guessed this, you might have spotted it. What happens is the inner cable has to go from there over to here, where you can see that groove around the lever. And it has to come out at an angle, and because of that angle there's a lot of side load on the outer cable. And what happened was I took it for a quick test ride, and within very few gear changes the inner cable had split through the outer cable. So absolutely terrible, no good at all. Time for a rethink. So I found a larger one, a larger cable stop clamp through St John Street Cycles. So really good service there. Thanks a lot, Shelley, for the help there. And she also gave me some good advice on shipping. Basically, Royal Mail's a nightmare at the moment, so I paid a little bit more, and I got the largest clamp I could find. Which I've had to modify, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So it was basically about 38.1mm inner diameter, so this diameter here. Now the only place I can now mount this is my steering column on the frame, which is actually 41mm diameter. So I basically thought this is the largest one I can find. I went on the internet everywhere. What I'll do is I'll buy one of these and I'll modify it. So that's exactly what I've done basically. And the way that I've made it to be able to fit to 41mm, so let me just show you there. That's 38.1 roughly. Now 41 is only about there. So essentially what I've done is I've cut out part of this clamp to give me a larger space across here to meet the to be able to go around the frame. And I've also machined out some of the hole, so drilled out some of the hole to allow the screw thread to stay perpendicular to that face there. And I'm using a angled countersunk screw there, so that will allow me basically to clamp it together and maintain that good thread connection. Now, as with this one, and they all seem to be like this, the standard way that the cables go together are very close together. They're far too close for my setup. So I need something that's going to be basically about 55 millimeters apart, so around about that sort of size. So what I've had to do is do a Masters bite mods on this part itself. So the original part that you can see was this black part here, and what I've done is I've basically added some material, so you can see there's 3 layers there of aluminium, and I actually, luckily, in my shed I had some old a piece of aluminium angle that I hacksawed 3 pieces of plate. I then drilled some holes in those plates. Obviously I needed to use the vise for this. It was absolutely essential. You would never do this without a vise. It's actually quite tricky, even if you've got a vise, to be able to hold it and clamp it all together. But I'm not going to bore you with all that. But essentially what I've done then is drill holes, 2 holes through the black part and through my 3 pieces of metal, clamping it all together with G-clamps and in the vise. I've then put countersinks, drilled countersinks into the holes so I can use my countersunk head screw, which I shortened, so it was basically one of these screws that's been cut down. I then used some 2-part epoxy resin in between each layer of metal, so the glue went on there, screws go on there. I've got some nylock nuts and washers there, tightened the whole thing up, left it overnight last night, and then today I've basically drilled this hole here, which is where my other cable is going to go. So essentially what I'm going to be doing is using this one here and this one here, because they're quite far away from each other and they happen to be in the right position. So I've just about added enough material to allow me to do that. Earlier on today I was literally just cleaning up the ends, filing it all back, because I will paint this part because it kind of looks a little bit too homemade, so it will be black. But I was literally just tidying it up, and I had it in the vise. I was happily hacksawing away, and for some mad reason I decided to hold this part as I was literally making the last cut. So some of you might be wondering, is this some kind of COVID-19 new fashion statement where we're easing lockdown and the only thing that we need to protect now is our thumbs? It's not a fashion statement. I literally hacksawed through the end of my thumb this morning, about 1 centimetre deep. I couldn't believe it. I thought, what an idiot. I'm going to be a burden on the NHS. I've been really fortunate that my GP was open today, and they're actually open tomorrow. Really good. I mean, it's Saturday today, and I was able to go down there, get a tetanus shot. My wife had cleaned it up and dressed it really well. The doctor actually complimented my wife's first aid skills, so that was really good. And yeah, basically, if you're going to start cutting pieces of metal, I mean, I've been doing it for years. I just took my eye off the ball because I was quite excited about having this part finished and making the progress. So do be very careful if you're going to do this stuff. So yeah, that's kind of where we are with that part. there is going to be another tale of woe, because and it relates to last Sunday as well. But in terms of this, there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. I'm really pleased with how it's turned out. I think it's going to do the business. But I'm not going to say too much, because as I mentioned in one of the previous episodes, I've said there's just a bit of assembly work to do now, and Bobby Baggs made a comment, sort of slightly giggling about that. So famous last words. So I'm not going to say any more. We'll go into the Tale of Woe Part 2 later on. So tune in and come back to that. See you later on.